the talk that I have today is based a lot on Thomas More's book, Care of the Soul. We live in this field, this creative field around us, and that it is our thoughts that create our outer experience, and so that is the inner is reflected in the outer. And so as we do that, as we go through life and we come to realize this, that there is when we become aware of the fact that it is our soul that is needing nurturing, and as Thomas More talks about in his book, Care of the Soul, that there are cycles. There's a cycle that our soul goes through, just like the cycles of nature, and this is all part of our spiritual journey. I know for me, I'm very visual, and so when I close my eyes and I think of spiritual journey, I see like a spiral staircase that that has, can be really wide or really narrow, and it just goes through, and I'm on there, and I wherever I am. And I think of it that in that respect, because as I go on this journey, I may come back to things that I thought I was done with, some shadow that's still there waiting for light to illuminate it. Yet I am at a different place. So it's like peeling the onion or taking off the leaves of an artichoke that reveals it to us. And so our souls are always changing, always in motion. Uh, and in this book, Thomas More talks about he's from Plato. We know about the teachings of Socrates that go way back, and when you think about it, Socrates learned it from someplace else too. I mean, so these principles that we talk about go back thousands of years, thousands and thousands of years, and at some point in time, Socrates was accused of misleading the youth, and he was put on trial. And what he said was that the most important thing we can do in life is to work for the well-being of our souls. And in Care of the Soul, Thomas More quotes Plato's book about Socrates, where Socrates says, "I do nothing other than urge young and old to care not for their persons or property, but more for the well-being of their souls." And that's what we're talking about, the light and the shadow. And as we go through these cycles in our spiritual journey, caring for our soul, allowing our soul to more fully and freely express our truth, it's not unlike the seasons that we experience in nature, always changing, always in motion. And when we open our hearts to the subtle wisdom that we can gain from the seasons of nature, spring, where there's an emergence and a renewal, summer, where we experience joy and abundance, autumn, where we're harvesting and letting go of that which no longer serves, and the winter, where it is a season of stillness and reflection. When we embrace every season as sacred, that every season has its place, then we can go into this very transformative and allow our greater expression of our divinity, a greater expression of freedom, a greater expression of love, a greater expression of abundance, a greater expression of our true selves. And so as we take this little journey that we're going to go on this morning, we will also talk about the practices that can help us expand whichever season we happen to be in our soul. Thomas More says that the soul has an absolute, unforgiving need for regular excursions into enchantment. And so I invite you, as we walk through this, to think of this as the excursions into enchantment that are vital to our soul expressing itself. And so let's start with spring, emergence, renewal. And if you've ever lived in a climate where there is snow through the winter, there's a time in the spring where there may be snow on the ground and you can walk outside and you see crocus popping up through the snow. You see these beautiful flowers, little flowers that are pink and purple and white and all this variety of color. And then you can see the daffodils and the tulips, and they are emerging, they are renewing themselves. And so think of a time when you have had an experience in spring where you recognize this emerging and renewing of life. Because spring arrives, actually, when you think of it, it arrives as a whisper. It's always so exciting for me that morning when I walk out and I see the first flowers of spring. And it comes with a whisper. And in our soul, it comes with a whisper of hope, frequently after a hardship, after something that has cracked us open. And it's a gentle invitation to begin anew, to start over again, to find out what it is that we are expressing. And what spring does, both in nature and in our soul, is to call forth what is dormant. It calls forth what has been there under the surface, and that buds break through, and when they break through the surface, it's not like there's a marching band waiting there to play da, 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 there they are. It's quiet. It's with no clamor, and it's definite. It's with confidence. And spring, in our spiritual spring, in our soul spring, is when that hope, when we feel that first ray of hope coming back to us after a hardship, and we dare to begin again. And we realize that we have the power within. And Ernest Holmes tells us that. He tells us that within you, and I'm talking to you, and look at your picture in your little box, you have the power to meet any situation life hands you. It's one of the basic understandings that we have of how our soul works, how the light and shadow work. And there's some questions when we realize that we're in the spring of our soul. There's some questions we can ask ourselves that help us through this, that bring that divine guidance, the divine clarity for us to take divine right action. So what new life wants to be born in me? What dream that's been long buried aches to feel the rays of the sun? Where is my soul nudging me to take a chance, to take a risk, to plant some seeds, to greet the world with innocence renewed? In our prosperity group this month, one of the prayers was about risk, taking risks, being willing to take risks, and knowing, trusting, believing that God is out there to support us. And one of the analogies or that came to one of our participants was, it's kind of like monkeys. They jump from tree to tree, and they let go of the tree they're in to get to the tree that they're going to. They take that risk. They take that risk. So what dream is ready to jump to the next tree to allow it to more fully express itself? And in Care of the Soul, Thomas More talks about that these are not grand achievements, but think of them as enchantments, small magical moments where the soul peeks through the mundane. It's the crocus that's peeking up through the snow, or any of the seeds that have been planted that are pushing up through the mulch in your garden, through cracks in the sidewalk, through anywhere you go, you see plants emerging. And this is not a time to rush. This is time for us to sit back and savor this miracle of beginning. And some practices that can help us embrace the renewal, to embrace this emergence, are affirmations that claim what it is that we know we are. Some people call it fake it till you make it with affirmations. I call it faith it till you make it. Because I'm coming from that place of faith. Not that I'm lying to myself, but I know this truth of myself. Visioning is another spiritual practice that can really, really help in this time of emergence and renewal. For we open ourselves up to that which is beyond our own imagination, our human imagination. And that the other practice is openness. When I catch myself judging or no way, open myself up. What's there that's causing me to react that way? And so we move into the summer of joy and abundance, and we shift that image. We shift the image of the plants coming up through the ground, first emerging to the rays of the sun. And I know for me, when I think of summer and I go into that, one of the first things that come to me is that last day of school, in grade school, where it's like, yay, we're done, celebration, the days are long, I can hang out outside longer with my friends, I don't have to come. It's so great. And the sun is bathing the earth, and the gardens all around us are just full of color and fruits, and vegetables, and I can go back to neighbors' gardens and my gardens, and just see all of the abundance around me, and I can feel the joy. I can feel the joy. And so it's time for celebration in this summer of the soul. It's time for gathering with others. It's time for expressing our gratitude for all the gifts that have come, that are here. And in this spiritual summer, we bask in the sun that is called joy. We allow joy to just fully envelop us, we recognize the beauty around us. And we're called to celebrate. We're called to celebrate this season of joy and abundance. And one of the things that every time I read this book, Care of the Soul, something that jumps out at me, because it is something I work on, and that is reminding us that joy is not frivolous. It's not something, that should only happen every once in a while, at celebrations or anything. It's not frivolous. It is essential to our soul. If we want to care for our soul, as he says in his book, we may need to relearn the mystery of joy, to make a place for it in our lives, and to protect it from the harshness of the world. Give ourselves that space to be in full joy. And just, happiness and joy for no reason. And there's some questions that we can ask ourselves. And I invite you to ask this one of yourself. It was an interesting exploration for me when I asked myself this. When was the last time you enjoyed yourself to fully be in full delight, to embrace happiness without any hesitation? When was the last time that happened for you? And how might you say yes to this pleasure of joy that nourishes your soul? And how can I guard that joy as a sacred resource, a place that I can go to and remember that abundance is not always external. It's not always seeing, a garden full of, like my sister's letting me know that her garden of jalapeno peppers, she's getting like 64 or 70 a day. And she's like, I can't can them fast enough. It's not always that. Sometimes it is our a rich harvest of gratitude that we feel for what is in our lives, no matter what is going on. Or it is a creativity. It is um, allowing ourselves to draw, allowing ourselves to sing a song, allowing ourselves to just be in joy in a creative way. I experienced that this week with my granddaughter. She decided that she and I needed to write a song. And I'm sitting there going, are you talking to me? And she's like, yes, we're going to write a song. And I don't even remember the song, but we had all kinds of fun words in it. And it was beautiful. It was creative. It was lovely. It was full of joy. It was abundance, abundant love. It was untangible, but it was there. It was just being simply present in the moment with her and allowing that joy to be in sacred, be that sacred resource and just lift everyone around up. And so a lesson that we can learn from this soul summer is open wide and allow our soul to dance, however that may be. And here's one that really hits me because I can easily go into, this is really great, but I'm waiting for that other shoe to drop. And instead, trust the goodness that surrounds each and every one of us. Trust knowing that this goodness is really there and nothing's going to come and take it away unless I allow it to with my thoughts. And so some practices that we can do for expanding our joy is be in community, however that may present itself to you. Find your generosity of time, talent, and treasure. Like for me, to sit there and be with this 4-year-old making up a silly song. There was a time when I wouldn't have done that because I would have been too embarrassed or whatever. And it was only her and I around. And so I opened myself up to that. And we can all be in mindful celebration of the joy and abundance that we have in our lives. And so we move on. We move on to the autumn. And we shift the image again. And I invite you to think of any memories that you may have of autumn. I know for me, growing up in Northern Virginia, where the seasons are very definitive. One of my many memories, whether it was here in Virginia or down in Georgia or up in Connecticut or any of the places I've lived where there's clear changes of seasons. One of my favorite views of autumn is the trees just ablaze. When I lived in Corning, New York, Corning is in a valley of tree-covered hills all around it. And in autumn, it is absolutely gorgeous. People actually make trips to that part of New York just to see the beauty of these trees. And one of my favorite ones is raking the leaves into a big pile and then jumping in and just swimming in all the leaves. Or perhaps you have memories of going apple picking and reaping harvests, or whatever it may be. Autumn is the time of reaping what has been sown, and it's also the time of letting go. And the trees show us that. It's a time of releasing. And this spiritual autumn is where we cultivate what we have cultivated what is in our lives, and we reap the harvest of that. And we look at what gifts, lessons, or relationships have grown and what have ripened to the point of letting go. And we can offer thanks for the bounty that we have. And whether it's visible or we just know it in our hearts that we have it. We can also be looking at this time of surrender, this time of asking what is being asked to release. What is my soul be asking me to release? What patterns or beliefs that no longer serve this spiritual journey that I'm on, that constrain or contain or hold me back? As Reverend Michelle spoke last week, it's looking at, is there anything to forgive as we co-create with the light and the shadow? And when we look at the trees, they lose their leaves, which appear to be a loss. But in reality, what it is it is preparing the tree for new growth. And I don't know if you've ever been in an area, this happened to me numerous times when I was living in Connecticut, having all these beautiful oak trees and maple trees and all around my house. And if they haven't dropped their leaves and an early snowstorm comes, it can destroy the trees. It can take whole trees down if they haven't released what no longer serves them. And I use that for a metaphor for my own life. And I invite you to, that if there's something that's holding me back, if there's something that needs to be gone, and it can hold me back, it can take me apart. And it takes courage. It takes courage to let go and to trust that the loss that we have is not the end, but a necessary clearing for a new beginning. Thomas More says we are shaped by losses as much as by gains, by endings as much as by beginnings. So, how can we honor this harvest and also make space for the farewells? Well, we can let gratitude, we can let forgiveness be a driver for that. We can allow gratitude and grief to find a home together. I know whenever I have lost someone near and dear to me, when I can allow myself to grieve and also at the same time, together with that, merge it together with the gratitude I've had for them in my life and what they have brought to me and what I have brought to them and what the relationship has brought to us. It makes that all go so much smoother for me. Doesn't mean to ignore the grief. Doesn't mean to allow myself, not allow myself to go through the grieving process. But it allows me to also be joyful for what I've had. For what happens is when we relinquish, when we let go of what is no longer serving us, our soul can grow deeper roots. And some practices that we have, some spiritual practices that we have, are forgiveness work, is journaling. It's finding rituals of release. Like we do the burning bowl ceremony at the end of the year. That's a ritual of release. We write down all that we no longer need, no longer serving us, and we burn the paper and allow it to go up into smoke, dissipating it back into one phrase, the nothingness from which it came. And we can find gratitude for the lessons we have learned. We can keep a gratitude journal. There's many ways to practice gratitude. And so now we move on. We move on to winter. If you've ever been blessed to be wherever, wherever, and to be outside during a snowfall, it is so incredible how the snow blankets the ground. There's a hush. It's almost as if all sound is blanketed, and the we are wrapped in a quiet. It is just incredible. I have friends who live in New York City who, whenever it is snowing in New York City, they like to get outside because it's the one time that they can really hear the hush. And it's not just because cars aren't moving around. It's just the way it is. And so often winter can be misunderstood as being empty and lifeless. Yet we all know that beneath the surface, beneath the snow, that there is a transformation going on. That any of us who are gardeners know that, if you live in the upper climate, where like where I am in Virginia, or that's that there are certain flowers, bulbs that need to experience winter to be able to pop through in the summer, in the spring. Trees need to go through winter. Our soul needs to go through winter. Sometimes we call it the dark night of the soul, but it's that season of contemplation is where we can listen deeply to that voice within us. And this dark night of the soul this winter of our soul can arrive any time in our lives, during periods of doubt or solitude, or where we just need to take a pause, where we feel most alone or vulnerable or uncertain. And in this book, Thomas More assures us that winter is vital for our soul. What he says is that in the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lays an invincible summer. An invincible summer. We go back to what Ernest Holmes said: within you is the power to meet any situation life hands you. And when we go into that winter time of our soul, where we reflect and we ask questions and we do that work, the forgiveness work, the gratitude work, the letting go, and really seeing where it is leading us, we open ourselves up to that. It's very powerful, because what winter does ask us is to turn inward, cultivate stillness, and listen to that voice. And we can do this in many ways. We can do it by journaling. We can do it by taking gentle walks, whatever the the nature has of the season. Take a gentle walk, take a meditative walk where you're not focused on anything other than the nature itself. And there are meditation practices that we can do that nourish our soul during this time. And we can embrace the unknown and find that trust that the darkness holds. We can always go back to the analogy of the seed that is underneath the soil, that is cracking open, that is placing down its roots so that it can be ready to push its shoot up to the sun for the spring that's coming. Trusting that there are new beginnings as we go through this. And a gift of this time is to just have the grace to just simply be for a time, to tend to our inner fire, to accept the mystery of the unknown, to find some peace in that, knowing that that every end is a beginning. And we can practice this through meditation, through rest, through creative solitude. Visioning too at this time is another practice that can help us. Forgiveness work. And as Ernest Holmes says to us, let us learn to be still and let the truth speak through us, to us, about us. So embrace the cycle. Embrace this cycle of our soul and know that no season is wasted. Every season is important. As we move through these spiritual seasons of emergence and renewal, of abundance and joy, of harvest and letting go, of stillness and inner reflection. And keep in mind as we go through this, it's not linear. They may not happen like the seasons of nature, which is driven by where we are as far as our orbit around the sun. It is driven by our soul's need to express, to release, to be quiet. And it's not predictive. It's not something we can say, okay, oh, let's see, it's July 20th. I think I'll be in the winter of my soul on August 5th. That doesn't happen. Although, wouldn't it be nice? No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't be real. And when we honor each phase of this cycle, we can welcome the enchantment and the challenge that is presented to us. And we can grow in wisdom and we can grow in depth. So let us care for our soul by embracing the phase that we're in right in this moment. And that there's a cyclical nature to it. And so I invite you over the next few days to let your soul tell you where it is right now, which season is it inhabiting right now? And you can ask yourself, so what is this season asking of me? And what wisdom does it offer me? And be open to that wisdom. And how might I greet it with openness and trust? And so may we each walk gently and attentive to our own season that we're in today and be respective of the season of others. It may not be in sync with us. And may each of us find these enchantments and find them everywhere in the ordinary and then have the courage to let go and find peace in the quiet. And so in closing, I offer this prayer for each of us. And if you choose to, you may close your eyes or not, but just settle into that place of knowing, of the soul, of that oneness that we all have. For what I know is there is only one life. And that life is beautiful, it's powerful, it's always available, and it's always creating out of itself, as itself, all that exists, all that ever has, all that is now, and all that ever shall be. This one life creates out of itself. And it is always wherever I am that life. It is in whatever I think, it is in every decision I make. And this life is my life now. I speak these words as the one that is here present, no matter how many individual boxes there are. What I know that this is unity showing up as the beautiful facets of this one life that only each and every one of us can express in our unique abilities. And so I claim and accept right now that I am open to this influence and the inspiration from this one source. And that at the deepest part of my subconscious, I am open to growing. I am open to expanding my expression of freedom, of love, of peace, of joy, of abundance, of light, of the light that I am. And that I have the thoughts necessary to have this expanded life. And that anything that is unlike it presents itself with a gift, presents itself as an enchantment for me to expand even more. And so anything that may still hover, it may still be there in my subconscious or stand in my way, just like the unwanted plant, the plant that chokes out the 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 flowers. Yet that every thought like that is uprooted and gone. And so that what takes place right now, as I go forward in this life right now, is empowerment, is beauty, is joy, is this greater expression of the one life as me. And it is in deep gratitude that I express this. It is in deep gratitude that I know this truth. It is in deep gratitude that I speak this word, for I know it is already done. And I lay this in the loving hands of the law which only says yes, which is driven by love, and allow it to unfold in perfect God, beauty, harmony, and order. And so it is.